Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar.
Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by our Barth. That's a fit. That's a match. No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
All right, I know you don't want to do this, but I'm going to bring it up. A lot of those concepts you're talking about were geared around the running back. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs led the team in catches. He led the team in carries.
Why are we doing this? Why? Every draft,
why.
Put your microphone on.
You know why.
Every draft season, you have to come at me with the running back, the punter, the guard.
And do they not usually end up making those moves?
Yeah, but
we're not here.
It doesn't mean that we should like it or we should applaud it.
I'm not. But
they took
here's
John
what
Robinson in the first round. Great, awesome.
But here's what you mistake. I am not applauding it, but nobody cares what we would do because we're not the ones making the decisions. They want us to tell them what we think in our expert opinion the team's going to do.
Okay.
It would be malpractice not to address it.
Evan Lazar,
whether the move is right or wrong.
Alex Barth, back in studio, back from Vegas. We're not going to get into too many wild Vegas stories, but a couple of little tidbits about the Luxor, which was a beautiful
Oh, you love the Luxor.
Elevators that go at 39-degree angles.
That was cool.
That almost made me throw up multiple times.
No,
not because I was drunk, just because the elevator is...
Evan just can't handle an elevator.
Not that elevator.
That was kind of cool.
Diablo Cantina.
Yeah, that was
fantastic
good.
Mexican
restaurant. And I
restaurant.
usually don't love Mexican food. That was really good.
A great Mexican restaurant inside the lovely Luxor. But I've had some moments where I've woken up since we've been back. I told you this, that I thought I was still in the Luxor. And then I wake up and I'm like, oh, good, I'm home. I'm not in this hotel in Vegas anymore. I know that was your first time in Vegas. I hope you enjoyed yourself. But now that I've been to Vegas 3 times in like a 7-month span, I am so Vegased out. I have no need for Vegas anymore. I've been there. I've done it. It smells. It's hot. Or this time it was...
It was not hot.
This time it was cold.
We're in a winter coat all week.
This time it was cold when it's supposed to be hot. Like, I'm just out on Vegas. And I love Vegas, but I'm out
You'll
on
be
it.
back. Like that sign says, when you're leaving, come back soon.
That's the worst part. I think that's the worst part. Is that knowing that the Raiders are once again on the road team schedule for next year. So no matter what I do, I will be back in Vegas next fall. I know this sounds like a first world problem. It totally
Poor
is.
Evan.
It totally
Poor
is.
Evan has to go to Las Vegas and watch football. Oh, no.
It's
How is
I'm
he
sorry.
going to get
it's
by?
Just not, it's one of those places that you go with your buddies, you go, and have a good time for 2 or 3 days. But when you have to go over and over again, and for a week at a time, it's not even just like that we're popping in and leaving, right? I mean, we've been there for 5-6 days straight. There's definitely a such thing as too much Vegas, and I've hit the Vegas quota and then some. So that's our Vegas minute. We want to start the show. I published my first mock draft today, Alex. I know you have one coming shortly on the Sports
Monday,
Hub.
yep.
But I want to go through some of the picks that I made in the mock draft and explain some of my methodology here of why I got to some of these things. Then we're going to do some Senior Bowl stuff. That will segue us into some Senior Bowl stuff because we haven't been on the air since the Senior Bowl. So we'll get an opportunity to talk about some of the standouts, and we'll see, take some calls and see where that takes us. 855-PATS-500 is the phone number. You can email at webradio@patriots.com as well. Let's get into the mock draft, though. I think the biggest thing that when I went into this mock draft, so the first thing that I wanted to do was get through the top receivers, the top corners, and the top tackles in the draft to have a really good feel of the guys that realistically the Patriots might target in the first round this year in the draft. I think we can all agree that those 3 positions, back to the rant at the beginning of the show, they're not, I pray that they're not taking another guard. I pray that they're not taking Bijan Robinson or your boy Gibbs from Alabama in the first round of running back is my point. We pray that that's not going to be. I pray. I can't speak for you.
Can I give you one more position that I could not be less interested in the first round? And some people actually, like the positions you named, I don't think anybody's really talking about that. The tight end in the first round thing.
Yeah, that too.
We need to stop because especially like Mayer in particular, I'm not saying I think he's a bad player. I actually think he's a very good player. But a big issue for the Patriots offense really going back to Cam Newton here, has been they're not horizontal enough, right? Like, if you stack the box against the Patriots, you're pretty much going to take away everything. I think Michael Mayer's a really good player, but he barely lines up in the slot. Forget out wide. I mean, you're lining him up in line.
Everything's being played in a phone booth.
Right. You're no more. You don't prevent teams from stacking the box. You don't prevent teams from, taking players outside the numbers. Right. So if you're going to use that high of an investment on a pass catcher, either trade it for a guy like T. Higgins, right, or at least draft. So and what's weird is the top receivers in this draft are all slot receivers, so they don't necessarily fix that problem either, at least not to the extent. But I see all these people who are all excited about Michael Mayer, as the
Musgrave because he put on a show in Mobile.
But Mayer, like, because he's
Dalton Kincaid,
he's a big guy, wears
rating.
87. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't make sense. I'm not saying tight end in this draft doesn't make sense. We'll get to that. But if we're listing the positions we're out on in the first round, unless they do something spectacular in free agency, it would trades and whatever. For now, I am out on tight end in the first round.
So I think the biggest issue that I had is that every single time I came up with a reason to take a position other than the guy at the position I took, I still came back to this still feels like such a glaring hole that they absolutely need to address. And over the last couple of years, the Patriots have targeted major holes on their roster with their top picks in the draft. Cole Strange. Needed guards, they draft a guard. Need a quarterback, they draft Mac Jones. Patrick Chung is about to retire, they draft Kyle Duggar, right? Like, they have gone need-based a little bit here.
Well, so and you've heard me do this rant before, drafting for need versus drafting the best player available. And everybody always says, well, you don't draft for need. You never draft for need. Just take the best player on the board, and that's what you do. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does the best player on the board mean? Are we talking about, like, overall talent level? Because if that's the case, there should be kickers and punters going in the first round. Like,
right.
We're going to get 20, 25 picks into this thing, and if we're just going by, like, pure throw-out positional value, just who is the best at their position relative to everybody else at their position, Jake Moody's a top 30 player in this draft. Would you agree with that in that context?
I understand what you're saying.
But that's the thing. Then people come back and say...
The kicker's always got to come up.
But then people... Or a running back. Jameer Gibbs is a top 30 talented player in this draft. Just talent.
John Robinson, I think, is a top 20 guy
in
this draft.
So they're the best player available. So if you're going to come at me and say, well, no, that's not what it means. Well, all right, well, now you're not taking the best player. Now you're putting qualifiers on it, right?
I also think that their approach has been pretty consistently...
Fill the biggest hole.
The best player available at the biggest area of need.
So that's the thing.
Have those, they're trying to get those two things to converge.
And what does Bill Belichick always say? We're going to do what's best for the team. So if the best player available is the best player for the team, you are factoring need in. So best player available doesn't actually mean anything, because you can make an argument that a kicker, a running back, how about all those years with Brady when they were passing on quarterbacks who were better players than the guys they were drafting in the first round, right? Well, that one, later in his career, maybe you could argue taking a quarterback, but I'm talking earlier on, right? Aaron Rodgers falls all the way to 20 whatever. I believe they picked before the Packers that year. I'm going to guess he was a better player than whoever they took, but that wouldn't help them.
Right.
So best player available is a fallacy. Best player available doesn't actually mean what you think it means. When you say best player available, the full sentence should be best player available for the football team. So don't come at me with, oh, you're too focused on drafting for need. That's not what teams do. That's what every team does. It just sounds sexier to say taking the best player available.
So I think that we can agree that corner, tackle, wide receiver are the three biggest spots where a significant upgrade on the roster would really move the needle. And we're taking quarterback out of it. I know some people would say quarterback, but we're taking quarterback out of it because I think they're taking quarterback out of it,
right,
at least for this year.
At that high in the draft.
Right. So the way that I always go about this is that I try to eliminate guys before I pick a guy, right? Okay. Like, I try to eliminate options, or I don't love this, I don't like that, and then I end up with the last man standing, right?
Yeah.
At corner, I got to admit, I've watched all of these guys, Christian Gonzalez, Joey Porter Jr., Cam Smith, Ringo from Georgia, and who's the other? Witherspoon from Illinois.
Yeah.
I think all of them have first round caliber traits, but I don't think any of them are really the entire package. And that's why I don't think you're going to have a Sauce Gardner, right? Like, you're not going to have somebody go in the top 5 at that position this year because of that. I think that a guy that could be available there that I would at that position is Joey Porter Jr., but then you have some political things with his father and the Patriots that I think you have to bring up in this conversation when it comes to draft and fit. But based off the things that Joey Porter Sr. has said about New England in the past, and you can just go look him up on your own time, I'm not necessarily sure that Bill's going to draft his son. I'm not sold on that.
And even on top of that, there's the Penn State thing. He never takes guys from Penn State.
And I would also mention that as good as I think Joey Porter Jr. could probably be in a proper role in the proper scheme, he is a higher legged or tighter hipped corner. He's somebody that when you look at him play, if he's not getting redirects or jams instantly early on in the route and guys are able to get up to top speed on him, he has a difficult time, I think, on film flipping his hips and then mirroring guys down the field, right? Being able to turn and run with guys even out of press coverage. I think on off coverage, smaller, shiftier guys are going to be able to break down on him and they're going to be able to change directions on him. So I'm not in love with any of the corners. We've talked a ton about wide receiver, and I feel the same. And I would also mention that with both these groups, I think it's a really deep draft at both of these positions. So is there a
really all three that the Patriots need? I know you're getting to tackle, but
is there a huge drop off from Christian Gonzalez to some of the corners that you might be able to get?
I think the corner
round?
has the narrowest drop off. I think in a lot of years, and we're going to talk about this. Like, oh, this guy's a first round pick, this guy's a second round pick. It's very important to remember that's all relative.
Yeah.
There are guys in last year's, there are guys in this year's class who aren't going to go in the first round who would have been first round picks last year. Locked first round picks that this year might go in the second round. They might even go in the third. So it's all relative when you look at it like that. And yeah, this is a year where I think at cornerback, there's going to be one or two guys that go outside of the top 60 at corner that in an average year might be first round picks.
Yeah, so the other position was wide receiver, and I love wide receivers. I love breaking them down. I love talking about them. It's the sexy position for them to draft. It's the most fun position for them to take a weapon, 100%.
Punters can be weapons.
The problem that I have with this wide receiver class is, one, the vast majority of the guys that I think fit their system are inside receivers.
Yeah.
I'm not touching Quentin Johnston with a 10-foot pole for the Patriots.
Well, not just the guys that fit their system. I think the majority of the best receivers in this draft are inside receivers.
Right. So we're talking about guys at inside receiver that also have flaws in terms of playing obviously outside. I think speed, vertical speed, long speed is something that some of these guys like a Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to have a knock on unless he goes to the combine and runs a 4.4, if he even runs. I think that people are going to worry about play speed or elite top end speed with a player like that. Jordan Addison, I think, had a lot of struggles against press man when he went to USC. He was better in that situation when he was with Pitt, but he goes to a better conference and he struggled. I thought getting off press coverage.
Thank you for saying the Pac-12 is a better conference than the ACC, by the way.
It is.
It was last year.
And handling those types of things.
I think size as a whole with some of these guys.
Right. Zay Flowers, Tank Dell. Right. Size issues. So all of these things I think come back to how do you hit the ball straight down the runway? I'll use a golf analogy for you, right? How do you split the fairway here?
Runway or fairway?
I'm going to go with fairway.
That's correct.
Yeah. How do you split the fairway? And I think that this is why I got the tackle. And I think, number one, it's the biggest need. The season starts tomorrow. I don't even know if they have two starting caliber tackles. I think Trent Brown you can count. But they definitely don't have.
Even Trent Brown's on the last year's contract, so you got to start planning ahead.
And you definitely don't have one. You have one starting tackle missing, right? Because you just don't even have anybody under contract, honestly, to play right tackle at the moment,
right?
Or left if you're flipping Trent back to right. So tackle's the biggest area of need on the roster. And I think there's three guys that are tier 1 tackles in this class that realistically one of them I think will be available at 14. Now, the guy that I pegged at 14 was Skoronski. And the reason why I did that is because I think Paris Johnson is built in a lab to play left tackle in the NFL. He's the prototype, right? He's a Tyron Smith type. He's like the guy that's just, you printed him out and he's a left tackle. He's 6'5", good length, good balance, good all that stuff. Like good feet, like just exactly what you want in a tackle. I think that guy is too polished in terms of his body type and his build and his frame to not go top 10. Broderick Jones, to me, is going to put on an absolute show at the Combine. You can see it when he blocks in space on film at Georgia. He can get out of his stance. He can run. He can really block on the move, screens, pulls, second-level climbs, like whatever. He can do all of that. So that tells me that I think that he's going to run really well and test really well in Indy. And I think that he'll be a fringe top 10, like late, like 5 to 9, 10 range, let's call it. So that leaves Skoronski, who I think is the least likely to put up a huge combine workout. I think there are some concerns about his arm length. I am not a big arm length guy, but that's going to come up in his draft evaluation. But ultimately, I think that the floor of him is extremely high. It's a safe pick.
He's tackle Cole Strange.
You are going to – I think he's more polished than Cole Strange. Okay. And I think that when you draft him – you are drafting a player that, and look, everybody could get injured, all that, like all those types of caveats aside. You are drafting a player that is going to be your starting tackle on either the left or the right side for the next half decade plus, if you actually pay him when the time comes. That's a whole separate conversation. So at least for the rookie contract, you're gonna put him in. He's gonna plug and play as a rookie, and you're not gonna move him, right? And that I think is something to really be said for that. I understand that maybe some people want a higher ceiling, like they want that all pro, maybe future type of multi-all-pro type of player. But I think at 14, you're really just trying to get a guy that is a plug-and-play player as a rookie that isn't going to miss and can really hold down a position for you long-term. And I think that that's Skoronski. It's tackle. It's the most likely option, I think, at 14 to fall to you amongst those tier 1 tackles. And I would also mention, lastly, he can play on the left side, which I think is important. As much as I love...
I don't think he's a right tackle. I don't think he's a combo tackle. I think he's just a left tackle.
As much as I love guys like... we've talked about them a ton. DeJuan Jones, Darnell Wright from Tennessee. I love those guys, but they're pure right tackles.
Yeah.
And I think that it's more important for them right now to address left. Maybe you flip Trent Brown back to right if Skoronski's ready to go, and you have that for next year, and then you maybe draft a right tackle later in the draft, or another tackle prospect, which I did in this, and double dip at the position to maybe get 2 starters in one draft. So Skoronski was my first round pick at 14. I just think it's too easy of a projection for them.
Give you an interesting hypothetical? Not a hypothetical. I don't know what this is. Let's say they didn't need a tackle. Let's say it's like last year, right, where you're set for the position for 1 year. You know you're going to need a tackle next year. I almost wish they could draft DeJuan Jones, redshirt him, and teach him left tackle behind the scenes. I don't think there's a way where that's possible.
I think there's a way that you could play him at right tackle, and then let's say he's absolutely balls out at right tackle. You could flip him at some point, and I know that scares some people because of how.
See, I wouldn't flip him if he has to play immediately. That's the thing.
I think it's possible.
It's risky though. And you're talking about that's the thing. It's not the safe pick.
It's not.
I love DeJuan Jones, man. He's so freaking good.
I like DeJuan Jones a lot too, and I'm not completely ruling out making. I didn't take another tackle in the top 100.
Yeah.
I took Steen in the 4th round, so maybe they do go and take 2 tackles in the top 100 and really solidify that spot.
But even still, they're not. If they don't take DeJuan Jones at 14, I don't think they're getting him.
No, No, I don't think so either. And the other thing that I didn't do trades in this one because to me sometimes I think we get lost in the sauce with the trades. Like you're moving all over the board.
You know me, I love doing the trades.
And you're like, I'm gonna trade this and I'm gonna trade that and I'm gonna trade a future pick. Like I'm just trying to get guys that make sense, right? Like, and if Skoronski ends up getting picked in the first 13 picks and they don't have a chance to draft him, then okay, whatever. But we need to talk about Skoronski.
Yes.
Like he's somebody that they could easily target in the first round. So my 2nd round pick was Josh Downs from UNC.
Love Josh Downs. I had him on my preseason watch list for the Patriots.
Some people, the feedback that I got was that it's too low, right? That he's going to go higher than this. I don't really like those discussions either because somebody always falls. Like somebody we're not expecting always falls. Somebody that we're not expecting, we think is going to go in the 30s, goes in the 40s, and so on and so forth. So we don't know for 100% fact that Josh Downs is going to go higher. What I like about Josh Downs compared...
Can I just make one more point on that before you get into the player himself?
Yeah.
This is a class where at that position, Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers, Kayshon Boutte, there's so much talent at that very specialized position. Somebody in that group's going to fall.
Yeah.
Somebody in that group's going to fall. And by the way, on the board we use, so you took him 46.
Yeah.
They have Josh Downs 44. So that's not a stretch at all.
Yeah. So Josh Downs, the reason why I like him over a guy like a Zay Flowers in particular, or our guy Tank Dell, who we both really like, is that he's a little bit more girthy than those two guys, right? He's 5'10", 190, 195. I think he's built to withstand getting targeted 100 times in the slot a little bit more than those two guys are. And he's got that...
He's listed at 5'10", 175.
I think he's bigger than that.
I think he's bigger than that too.
You look at the Edelman or the Welker comparisons, I think that he's a thicker build. I think he's got sort of that running back type of frame where he's a little bit thicker. He's got a low center of gravity, can change directions really well, can pick up yards after the catch with the football in his hands. This is Mac Jones's jitterbug, right? Like this is his slot receiver, his Welker, his Edelman, his get open in a phone booth, catch the football, add 5-6 yards to it after the catch when he's got some breathing room, and keep the chains moving. That's who Josh Downs is.
And I'll say this.
They have to hit on that skill set in this draft.
Josh Downs, from everything, and I haven't talked to him personally, but from everything I understand about him, so they have Drake May come in last year, UNC. Drake May, I believe he was a true freshman, or was he a redshirt freshman? Either way, first year as a starter. I mean, he's a high-ranked recruit, so redshirt freshman. And, like, he tore it up. And Josh Downs was that guy that kind of, you have this young, inexperienced quarterback that he felt he could go to. Now, Mac Jones is going to be more experienced than Josh Downs. The roles kind of flip there, but this is a guy who kind of knows how to carry a quarterback along.
Yeah.
And that's certainly something the Patriots need.
Yeah.
I talk about, potentially replacing Jacoby Myers.
Right.
That's something Jacoby Myers was excellent with, kind of just helping Mac Jones along. This is a guy that third down, he's going to be your first read all the time, and he's going to deliver more often than not.
Yeah, so Dante Scarnecchia has been on various shows and stuff like that, and he's talked about needing to get Mac Jones his binky. Like, who's his guy when it's 3rd and 5 and he needs a first down? Who can he immediately look to? I think Jacoby Myers has tried and at times elevated to that status, but I think they need somebody that's a little bit more dynamic and more consistent in that role, and I think Downs can do that. And I just think that in general, whether it's Downs, whether it's Flowers, whether it's Jackson Smith and Jig, there's so many options of that skill set in this draft that it seems inexcusable to me to not come away with one. They have to draft one of those guys.
It does, but we've also done this before. We did it at linebacker last year. We did it at wide receiver the year before that.
But just because they don't do it doesn't mean that it's the right move.
I know.
Like,
and look, I think their three biggest needs are so far and away the three best positions in the draft. And maybe you could argue their fourth biggest need is tight end, and that's another excellent position in this draft.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to temper my expectations because they never attack these strong classes, but I'm almost kind of agreeing with you in a different way. Those other years, it's not like they went out and took players they didn't need, right? But it's going to be so hard for them this year to not pick from the strongest positions, just given the way the board sets up and everything.
And last year, and we're going to get to talk to him again, and I'm looking forward to having his answer about this again. Last year, Matt Groh talked about having to attack the receiver position a little bit differently, and now it's a position of great premium value that you need to go out and get these guys. You can't just sit back and hang out and wait for somebody in the 7th round to turn into Julian Edelman anymore. So I look at it and I say with receiver, especially because it's so much cheaper to find them in the draft than it is to go out in free agency or out in the veteran trade market and acquire one. Like, let's say they go out and I don't think he's getting moved, but if they trade for T. Higgins, now you're going to have to give T. Higgins a 5-year, $125 million contract.
You have to give him like 20% of your salary cap, 25% of your salary cap.
And you traded a first-round pick for him, right? And all these different things. So the best and easiest way, well, I shouldn't say the easiest, the best way in terms of a cost and just in terms of a value, I guess the best way to put it, is to draft these guys. And my inclination is then to take that and say, well, then you should keep taking stabs until you find it, right? Like,
Right.
It took Taekwon in the second round last year. If they take one of that group that we've been mentioning a bunch here today in the first or second round this year, like, this is what you should keep taking stabs at it and bites at the apple until you get it. Right.
Well, they can do both too, right? They can use a second-round pick on a guy like Josh Downs and then double up with Demario Douglas later in the draft. And I'll say this too: Bill O'Brien's offense at times, they can run 2 slot receivers.
Yeah, I mean Edelman and Amendola did it, then
right?
Welker and sort of Edelman towards the end.
Even at Alabama, they would kind of get weird with it with Mechie and Slade Bolden.
Yeah.
So I'm not opposed to them doubling up at the position either.
Yeah, I just think you need to keep taking swings there because
Yeah.
these wide receivers in the draft, every draft class, I know the Patriots haven't had the best luck, but every draft class, it seems like there's a half a dozen guys that come out that end up being starters and maybe even stars, even in later rounds. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to be a first-round pick. There's guys in the day 2 that have been coming out for years now that end up being hit. So to round out the top 100, I took Julius Brents with my third-round pick here out of Kansas State. Both of us have talked a little bit about him. I don't know if we've talked about him.
I've talked a lot about him.
On air together. But Julius Brents is the day 2 long, athletic outside corner, right? 6'3", 200 pounds. I thought what really stood out at the Senior Bowl in one-on-one drills and the film that I saw from practices was his ability to flip his hips and get out and run, right? And that's not something that a lot of guys at that size can do. Can you transition your hips? Can you get out and get off of press coverage and then flip and run with the guy? Like, that's not easy to do at 6'3". He's not leggy. He doesn't stall out of his transitions. He's really quick and smooth out of the transitions. And I think when you look at learning from past mistakes with that skill set, like a Juwan Williams ran in the 4.6s.
Yeah.
Juwan Williams couldn't transition, flip, and run, right? Like, that was the biggest issue that he has. I think that a guy like Brent's, at least from what I've seen, can do that a little bit more consistently. He was also in a system at Kansas State where he was just asked to be on an island, like most of the game. You got this guy, right? Man coverage on an island. So he went up against Quentin Johnston at TCU twice. It was a back and forth battle. I think in the the regular season game, I can't remember which one it was. One of them, Quentin Johnston, put up some numbers against him.
Quentin Johnston, so he had, in the Big 12 championship game, he had 4 for 156.
Yeah.
But he had like an 80-yard catch, 80-yard like catch and run that was just on I think it was on zone because it was like at the end of the half.
Yeah.
That might have not been Brenton coverage on that one.
So he got beat. He got called for a couple of DPIs in that game. But
he does get a little handsy. That's my one.
Yeah, I think that he'll need to refine that. I think he needs to refine being able to track the football in the air a little bit better. I think that's what happens is that he loses the ball a little bit, and then the receiver stops to go up and elevate for the football, and he's on top of him, right? And then he gets the flags. So I think that there's going to be some elements of his game that need to be seasoned, that need to be worked out. But if there's one thing that I think I'm confident in them being able to do is to coach up those elements of cornerbacks, right? Like the details.
Yeah.
I think when they've missed in the past, they've missed on the athlete, right? They've missed on the actual movement skill of the player, not necessarily that they can't coach him up.
And this goes back to like what we were doing last year with Tariq Woolen. And I don't think he's Tariq Woolen, but he's 6'3", 202. He can move. Just get him in the building, and you'll figure it out after that because you do have a great coaching staff on the defensive side of the ball. And whether it's him.
And a good track record developing that position.
Right. Any one of these big corners. I think Brent he's my favorite of the like non-obvious first-round pick ones, but just get him in the building and figure it out because, boy, with a 6'3" corner, when you got to play the Bengals with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase, when you got to play the Raiders with Devontae Adams, there's all these teams with big receivers in the AFC, right? When you got to go play those teams, you have a guy that look. Marcus Jones going against both DeAndre Hopkins and Devontae Adams was so much better than anybody could have expected. But at the end of the day, he's going to be 5'8". Yeah. And there were times when that came up. Like there was nothing. They're just throwing jump balls, and 6'4" T. Higgins is going to be able to get up higher.
Right.
So having a guy like Julius Brents would just completely change the way they can operate against some of these elite offenses.
Yeah, I think talking to people at the Shrine Bowl, size at corner and tackle were the two biggest things that kept on coming up.
Not size at tackle, just like tackle.
Right.
Yeah.
It kept on coming up in conversations. And I think that you said, oh, what do you think about this guy? What do you think about that guy? And a lot of the time when you pointed out one of these Jack Jones, Marcus Jones type of corners, a guy, like Keitrell Clark, who he really liked in practices out of Louisville, we got Keitrell Clark, right? We got 3 Keitrell Clarks.
So this is another thing where
Julius Brents.
I would love them doubling up and taking a guy like a Keitrell Clark or a Miles Brooks later on in the draft, but hey, that can't be all you come away with.
Yeah, so I'll just rattle off these.
Yeah, I was gonna say we're 35 minutes in. We've done 3 picks.
Trey Dean in the 4th round.
Love Trey Dean.
Shrine Bowl like the player of the Shrine Bowl, I think, and he was on the West team where the Patriots coached. And we heard some guys that really on the coaching staff that were really high on Trey Dean,
and he was really high on the coaching staff too. I think that does matter here.
Yep. Tyler Steen from Alabama, their left tackle, who I think is a tackle. And I think can play either side, most likely. I love that he played in the SEC his whole career. Went to Vanderbilt first, and then he transferred to Alabama. So a very good tackle prospect, I think, from where you're going to get him.
Here, just a quick thing on Steen.
Yeah.
I always look at, and Alabama doesn't do transfers as much as everybody else, just because, and this is kind of changing now, but you don't transfer out of Alabama. Right? So there aren't as many guys coming in, but when Nick Saban takes a guy who he's played against multiple times and says, I've got to get him, especially from a program like Vanderbilt, that tells me a lot.
So Steen, I think, can start in the NFL also. I think he's got starting.
He start right away, though.
Starting caliber traits. I don't know if he can start right away, but if you assume that Trent is going to start for a year, and then maybe Steen is the guy in 2 years because you're going to start Skoronski in this instance.
Yeah.
In year 1. Last 4th round pick, Cameron Latu from Alabama, the tight end. You talked about it briefly. Loaded tight end class, one of the best tight end classes in recent memory. I think you have to pick someone out of that hat.
Yeah.
And I took Latu for obvious reasons, the Alabama connection. If you look at his stats under Bill O'Brien the last 2 years, that's when his career really took off at Alabama, was playing under Bill O'Brien. I think he's a really solid route runner. I think he's somebody that's very crisp and sharp out of his cuts and doesn't drift and doesn't do those little things that allow defensive backs to get back in there. I think he can block a little bit. I think he can move around a little bit. I don't think he's got the ceiling that some of these other guys at the top, because he doesn't have that top end athleticism, but I think that he's just a solid, well-rounded player.
On his ceiling, though, and when you talk about his route running, I feel like we don't talk about these guys a lot. Like, he's a smart route runner.
Yeah.
You watch him against zone, like he knows where to go, and part of the reason is he actually was recruited as a defensive end and then switched to tight end after his first year. So when I see a guy like that, I don't know that he has a ceiling of like Musgrave or Kincaid, but like I think he actually has sneaky ceiling. You're right. He doesn't have the athleticism. He's never going to run like a 4.4.
Right.
But the fact he's only been playing the position 2 years and he's gotten this far leads me to believe that like he's a guy that can pick things up quickly and all of that.
Especially in this system. I think he knows the system like the back of his hand.
Yeah.
That's
so
just by the way
sneaky upside for him.
6th round, I know you told me this was too late for Jake Moody, but I took Jake Moody.
It is too late for Jake Moody.
The kicker from Michigan, I think that they're going to come away with a kicker or a punter. They're going to draft one of them. They have these 6th round picks. Maybe they package the 2 6th round picks and move up back into the 5th round for their special teams round. They don't currently have a 5th round pick. They don't own a 5th round pick.
Get one. Some places are projecting the Karras comp pick could come in as a 5th, not a 6th. Yeah,
it's possible. The next guy here, Tyrese Wheat from Mississippi State, another Shrine Bowl guy that they absolutely loved on the West team. Edge defender, 260, 265, can play with his hand in the dirt or stand-up linebacker on the outside. Someone that just sets the edge the way that they want people to set the edge. He's not going to be super flashy. He's not going to jump out at you with all that kind of stuff, but he's just a sturdy, rock-solid, strong side edge defender, which we know they desperately want.
I like 3 down defensive end, which I love. He kind of reminds me of Dietrich Wise a little bit. Yeah. And there's another guy they worked with at the Shrine Bowl, Habakkuk Baldonado from Pittsburgh.
He was in here originally, and I swapped him out for a week.
Yeah. I also took Wheat in the same spot in my mock draft, and I had a really tough time between the two of them.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I think Haba's a little bit more upside with his athleticism. He's somebody that really can jump off the film on that first step, right? That first step explosiveness, that get off is really impressive from Haba. But I think that Haba to them will be like a situational rusher, like a third down.
He's not
guy.
as much of a run
right.
player.
So I think Wheat is that early down run guy.
I will say though, we only overlapped. I saw your draft already. We only overlapped 5 picks this year.
Only
and
5.
I think only 4 of them were taken in the same spot. So
I just look at their edge group, and Uche and Jennings are going to be free agents. Their rookie deals are coming up next offseason. But they also have guys like Judon, who's on the TVs right now, talking
he's doing
on NFL
Network. That's a nice sweatshirt.
There you go. Judon, Uche, those guys are pass rushers, right?
Yeah.
They need somebody that I think is going to hold up a tight end and a combo block on the outside, right? That could be. I think that's what they want Jennings to be as well. But I think that Wheat would join that mix. Here in the 6th round, still Travis Dye from USC, the running back. This is where I think they should take a running back.
Can I just say, hang on,
somewhere on day 3?
3 years ago when we started working together, you would have never made this pick. You would have been so annoyed when I suggested it. I am so proud of you for putting this pick in.
It kind of pained me still. He won me over. Talking to him.
Oh,
at the
he's
Shrine Bowl
awesome to talk to.
Won me over. So I think that Dye would have went a little bit higher if he was healthy and he could do all the.
I think he would have been fringe top 100.
The showcases and stuff, but he injured his ankle towards the end of last season, so he's been held out of all these types of the Shrine Bowl. He was there just for interviews and to be with the team.
He was out there at practice though.
He didn't participate though.
But he was like standing out there with the coaches, taking the coaching. That's something they're going to notice.
Yeah. So Travis Dye, USC, I think has a chance to be a James White, right? I think he's got that change of direction. I think he's got that acumen in the passing game. He can pass block.
Really good pass blocker.
Smart kid. I think he understands his role in the passing game and all those types of things. So,
he's been working with Shane Vereen actually a little bit, he told me.
There you go. Change of direction at the top of the route, that type of stuff. All right. Next 6th rounder, Forsyth from Oregon. Alex Forsyth. So I went back and forth on this one too because they have that tackle that was at the Shrine Bowl. I'm not going to try to pronounce his name.
Well, they also have TJ Bass.
Right. He's the left tackle.
Yeah.
But Malasila, I'm not even going to do it.
Just do the initials.
M-A-L.
M-A-L.
Are the initials. The right tackle.
I mean, that's what it would do. JSN, right?
Yeah. The
M-A-L.
right tackle from Oregon. He was at the Shrine Bowl on the East team. He's an NFL caliber player. TJ Bass, you mentioned their left tackle, is probably going to move inside the guard in the NFL.
Yeah.
He's an NFL caliber player. Forsyth is their center, who's an NFL caliber player for the starting center for the last 2 years. I think they like Cody Russi a lot. I do. But I think once you start to plan for post David Andrews, it would be nice to have multiple guys that could potentially fill the center role moving forward. And the reason, obviously, that we take an Oregon guy here is because of Adrian Clem reportedly coming on board. I think that he's going to be somebody that he's going to have one of his guys, whether it's a UDFA or it's a late round pick. Like if I took Forsyth, he's going to get one of his guys.
I just think Bass is interesting because there's some 3 positional versatility.
Yeah,
there.
he can move around.
I think they'll like that.
Yeah.
So that I went with Bass in that spot.
Yeah, that's not bad. Okay, 7th round, another Shrine Bowl standout, Anthony Orji from Vanderbilt, the linebacker. I really liked what Eric Galko had to tell us about him. The first thing that he mentioned is that he's a downhill player, right?
Yeah.
Like attack the line of scrimmage, take on blockers, play the run well. And then I thought from all of that, I actually thought that his passing coverage stood out a little bit in Vegas, and that he was a much better player in space or player in coverage than maybe he was getting credit for from some of the people coming in. So that was the mock draft. I really thought that the biggest thing for me was trying to dip into some of these stronger classes this year. Tackle, corner, receiver, tight end. Like I thought that you really needed to come away with a player at each one of those positions. Before we wrap up this and take some calls, what's your biggest gripe with my mock draft, Alex?
That
I need your biggest gripe.
That Jake Moody's not going in the 6th round. No, I think
it is that. Don't change your stance. It is that.
Honestly, I think it's the Forsyth pick. They're so just the numbers, like not even the depth in terms of the talent.
Okay, so let me explain a little bit further because I that's a fair gripe.
Yeah.
So Forsyth can play center. He's listed at 6'3", 300 pounds. It's a little bit thin to be a guard, but I think that he could play guard.
Okay.
And we're getting to that point now. I hate to do this, but like with Mike Onwenu, like, are we paying Mike Onwenu or are we not paying Mike Onwenu? Like, what's the future there?
If you're gonna do that, you've got to invest a little more than a guy because he's never played guard. I don't think Forsyth. I think he only played center in college.
Early on in his career, he played a little bit.
I'm talking like significant snaps, not filling in for 5 snaps.
He was a 2-year starter at center.
At that point, go get a guard, or like I either want positional versatility there, or I just want raw size like Dalton Wagner.
Right.
That's kind of where I'm at. I'll tell you where we're both wrong though.
Okay.
So as I go through your draft here, you have Big 10, ACC, Big 12, SEC, SEC, Big 10, SEC, Pac-12, Pac-12, SEC. I'll tell you for mine right now, spoiler alert, SEC, Big 12, AAC, SEC, SEC, Pac-12, Big 10, SEC, Big 12, Pac-12. There's no Chattanooga there. There's no, I forget where Sam Roberts went, Northwest Missouri State. There's no South Dakota State, as much as I love the defending national champion Jackrabbits.
But doesn't, and this is maybe wishful thinking on my part, and I guess on your part too, for your future mock draft here, but this is got to be, they have, like, and I understand that Kyle Duggar's a good player and they got him from the D2 level and it doesn't always work out. I get that. But it just feels like, especially in the first round at 14 is a premium pick. That's not 28th, right? I know they traded down, but
so hang on. So what I'm saying, let me give you last year. FC, I don't know any of most of the conferences beyond FBS. So FCS, Big 12, AAC, Pac-12, FCS, Sun Belt, SEC, D2, SEC, Big 10.
That's painful.
But let's go the year before. SEC, SEC, Big 12, Big 12, Big 10, SEC, Pac-12, and then AAC.
And that in 2021 might be the best draft they've had in a decade.
Yeah. So, like, we're kind of both projecting them to, and now look,
you know my thing. I want name brand players. I want guys that played at big schools. Like, I can go and watch Peter Skoronski against legitimate pass rushers in that conference, the Ohio State guys. I went and watched them against Aiden Hutchinson the year before this, right? Like, guys that are playing in the league at a high level. Like, I don't need Chattanooga. And there's another guy, offensive lineman from Chattanooga in this draft, by the way.
Well, so let me bring this one up. Cody Mock, who I think you actually like
Cody
more
Mock.
than me out of nowhere. This is the most surprising development of the draft.
That guy's a hog molly.
This is the North Dakota State converted guard that is missing his 2 front teeth, that plays with the jersey rolled up and his gut out.
Nasty.
That Evan just loves. This is the player Evan has hated for years. We're spending
pops off the film.
The week in Vegas was horrible for you. You're drafting running backs. You like the North Dakota State guards. But my point is,
explosive out of his stance. He generates movement. He plays with nastiness. Like, this is like the type of guy, like, that's offensive line, baby.
But here's my point.
Cody Mock.
You you wouldn't be upset if they took him in the 3rd round. I don't think I'd be upset if they took him in the 3rd round.
But they'll take him in the 1st round.
But here's my point. Like, that's a Summit Conference. There's smaller school players in this draft that we like, but this feels more like, they've done this in the past. They've overcorrected.
Yeah.
Right? Even when things work, they will overcorrect away from it. So how do you overcorrect from Chattanooga and South Dakota State and Western Kentucky and Northwest Missouri State? And that's nothing against the players. It's just, it's a different approach. You go big SEC, Big 12, when the Big 12 was maybe as good as it's ever been this year.
Right.
Unfortunately, it's on the way out. That's another story. You go, I didn't go big on the Big 10. You did, but you go big into those big conferences.
If I'm not a Big 10 guy, but if it's in the trenches, the Big 10 gets the trenches correct.
Big 10 gets the trenches.
Right. Like, the SEC, if you're going to draft defensive players, skill players, corners, receivers, like, I definitely go SEC all day. But when it comes to tackles and offensive linemen, like, those guys get that type of play, and I love the mentality.
Yeah. Oh, the Big 10 is a line. We could do a whole show on which positions you draft from which conference, but we got to take some calls.
All right, we're going to take some calls now. Thanks for hanging on the phones. We appreciate our deliberation back and forth on Mock Draft 1.0. That's on Patriots.com right now. Patty and Agawam. What's up, Patty?
What's up, guys?
Hey.
First things first. Great job last week.
Thank you.
All those shows were informative and entertaining. I loved it. So So I want to kind of piggyback off of Alex's situation where let's pretend that they fix the offensive line, at least for this coming year. There's three guys I would like to see them possibly take in the first round at wide receiver. And I just want to get your guys, if you can do a quick sum, because I know you probably got other calls waiting, just the pros and cons of these three guys in this system, in Bill O'Brien's system. Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, and Keyshawn Boutte. And I'll hang up and listen, guys.
Thanks, Patty. All right, three guys that we both are pretty familiar with.
So this is the second tier of the slot receivers after Jackson Smith and Jigba, pretty much.
So he said Zay Flowers, right?
Yeah.
Addison was the next
yeah,
one.
and Keyshawn Boutte. So you
Right.
throw in Josh Downs, and that's the second tier of slot receivers. JSN, I think, is in his own tier.
So Zay Flowers, electric player, electric with the football in his hands, can go vertical, right? Can do all that. He is, from a movement standpoint, one of the more exciting players in the draft. Like, just an absolute jitterbug, explosive guy, rocked up, all that. But 5'9", 170, right? I think is what he's at right now. And that part of it does have some hesitation for me, because in this offense, in Bill O'Brien's offense, that guy's going to be targeted 120 times. And is he going to be able to take the wear and tear of being targeted 120 times in the slot in the NFL, going over the middle, that type of stuff? I don't look at his body type and see, when Edelman used to walk around here, Edelman was like a UFC fighter. Like, that guy was rocked up, right? When I stand next to Zay Flowers, I'm like, he's a little bit slighter framed. And that's why I liked Downs a little bit more for this mock, was because I think he's a little bit stouter.
Well, Zay Flowers also won't be there at 46.
And that's part of it too. Right.
To me, so just real quick with Flowers, the pros is obviously how well he moves. I mean, he just looks natural gliding around the field. He's explosive with the ball in his hands. I would be really worried about his durability. Jordan Addison, teams are going to figure out very quick. If you get in his face, you press him at the line. If you start kind of hitting him early in the game, really make him feel it, he can fade a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's not something you can have from that position at all. If anything, you need to get stronger the more you get hit. Julian Edelman used to talk about the more he took hits, the more fearless he'd get. I don't remember if I said this to you on or off the air, if I said it on another show. Keyshawn Boutte is the gem in this draft. Now,
he's the exact type of guy that they picked, though, and he's an absolute bust, because he's such a projection. He's
but is he, though?
He's 110% projection. He didn't play.
But he played in 2021. He was excellent.
Yeah, but
he was the consensus number one receiver in this class for almost a year for a reason.
He's a great talent. I just think that you're fully hoping that you can capture that 2021 season lightning in a bottle.
But don't they do this a lot? Remember, they did this with Barmore.
I'm not saying that they haven't done it. I'm just saying, how much success have they really had doing it?
Barmore was a guy who had a better, I don't remember the exact year of class, but like 2 years before the draft, Barmore was better than his last year in college. I just did this the other day. Ramondre was another one. Ramondre was suspended.
Yeah.
Most of his last year at Oklahoma, right?
You're swaying me. Keep going.
And he came back and I wish I could remember the other names of these guys, but like they've done this before. Jack Jones, you got to go like all the way back. Like he was better as a freshman.
I'm just
sophomore.
petrified of the guy that Boutte to me is like a ball of clay, right? Like he's exactly what you want out of a receiver. Like he's super talented, explosive, can do all sorts of different things out on the field.
He's 6 foot, 205. You can probably play him on the boundary a little bit if you really like. You could. He's not just a slot receiver.
When
Zay
he's
Flowers
at his
and
absolute best on film, he's a little bit Odell-like. But
when he's at his best, who's better than him in this draft?
I don't know if anybody is.
And the other thing is, like, everybody wants, just draft a number one receiver. Like, just draft. That guy's not there for them in this draft.
Yeah.
The 14th pick, that guy's not there. Quentin Johnson isn't going to be that guy in this offense. And Flowers and Addison have their limitations. They do.
Right.
They can be a guy, but they can't be the guy. The one guy in this draft, I think, can be the guy for them. Not will be, but can be.
Swing.
But in the second round, it's not that first round risk. How's it, honestly, how's it any different than Tyquan last year? Was Tyquan not a massive swing?
I'm not saying it's any different. I'm just saying that, for my opinion, because they took that swing on Tyquan, which is almost basically a traits pick, right? Yeah. Like fast guy, great 40, blazing speed. I gravitate towards the safer pick because I think that is a reliable guy. I think would do better in this style of offense than the high ceiling guy. And so I look at a guy like JSN, Jackson Smith and Jigba from Ohio State, and I know for a fact watching him that all 32 teams are going to be kicking themselves because they passed on him in the first round this year. But it's still really.
You think JSN's not going to be a first round pick?
I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get JSN at 46, you take JSN over
I don't think he's going to be at
Boutte.
46. I think he'll be a 30s pick. I think he'll be early second round, unless he runs. If he runs and he puts up a good number, but there's a lot of people that I think are really concerned about his play speed. Like, he's not a fast receiver. He doesn't pop off the film when you watch him run. And I think that's going to be a concern for a lot of teams. But I know for a fact that we're going to come back to it in 3 years, and JSN's going to be like Michael Thomas in this draft, right? And everybody, we're going to be like, well, what the heck? Like, why did,
Let's
what
hope
do
he's
we
a little
miss?
better than Michael Thomas.
I mean, Michael Thomas was awesome for
1 year.
He's awesome for more than 1 year.
I don't know. I look at Boutte and it's like that. Yes, it's a risky pick. That's also the pick outside of last year, and that's the pick they haven't made that we've kind of been waiting for them to make. They keep making these safe picks at wide receiver, and they don't pan out.
I don't think Tyquan was a safe pick.
That's the one exception. But like going back before that, it was just a lot of safe picks, and Boutte is you're talking about the athlete, the guy who's rocked up, like the term you like to use,
yes.
right? The guy that can jump out of the gym and explode out of the gates.
He's a great athlete.
Bill O'Brien's going to figure it out with this isn't the Matt Patricia offense anymore.
I don't know who he is consistently. Like, I know what he could be. I know what his ceiling is. I know what his elite traits are. But what is he like? What is he consistently that he's going to develop into an 80 catch guy in the NFL? Like, what is it? Well, what do we have to hang our hats on?
His explosiveness in his route running.
But he's never done it though. Right?
He has done it.
Well, what did he put up 2 years ago? It wasn't like anything crazy.
So first of all, he's playing a horrible LSU offense.
Don't make the excuse.
No, he's playing in a horrible.
Zay Flowers is playing at BC.
Well, it's fair. He in 6 games, so we can double these for a full season of production.
Why was he only healthy for 6 games, or is this the COVID year?
It was I don't remember why he didn't play. I'll look it up. But like hypothetically,
this is my point.
All right, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why. No, but like I don't.
No. He only played 6 games in a year where they played double-digit games.
I think he sat because of the draft. I don't know. 38 catches for 509 yards and 9 touchdowns.
Exactly.
In 6 games. He had 9 touchdowns in 6 games, Evan, in the SEC.
But that's college. Like that's not a ton of production.
It's the SEC.
All right, we're gonna go back and forth on this. All right, Sean in Vancouver. What's up, Sean?
Evan, I really liked your mock draft. I agree with it completely.
It's 100% correct, right, Sean?
Well, the one thing I noticed is the 3 players that really stood out for me in the Shrine Bowl. You have 2 of them on this draft of guys from the West team that I really like. One guy who I also like, and I want to talk to you about this because of Bailey, is Michael Turk.
Oh, yeah.
I know you probably
That's
don't
Alex's guy, Michael Turk.
Kicker and a punter.
Michael Turk loves Alex Barth. Loves him.
Yeah. Well, Alex, how do you feel about him?
The ball explodes off his foot.
He put on a little bit of show.
He's very accurate. No, he was incredible. He was he kind of reminded me of like rookie Jake Bailey, where just when he punts the ball, everybody was watching. That's not normally how it goes at these events.
Even Bill.
Like when he punted the ball, he can play. He's going to be a punter in this league for a long time.
Don't look at his Twitter though.
Okay. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is free agency, because that's going to change the way the Patriots look at the draft. And there isn't a lot at wide receiver. A lot of people say that Jacoby is the number 1 guy. But someone that I'm looking at is really going under the radar is DJ Chark. I think he has the size and the speed as a deep threat. He didn't have as many opportunities with Detroit, but when he did, he came through. He did get injured, which has been a problem with him, but he looked good after the injury, so he's healthy now. What do you think of DJ Chark?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Thanks for the call. And, Michael Turk, we both really were impressed by him. You mentioned Chark. I still feel like Chark is in that tier of receiver that they've had to come through here in the last couple of years. Like Devontae Parker, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, I don't mind Chark as like a member of your offense, right? I don't think he can't play. I just don't think he really changes the complexion of anything that you don't already have. Like, I think he's just redundant in terms of skill set, or not in terms of skill set, in terms of talent level to what you have. Like, I think he might bring a little bit of a different downfield element than some of these other guys do, but I don't know. I just feel like from a skill level standpoint, he's kind of the same, right? Like, I don't think he's a number one. I think he's kind of a complimentary guy.
They need somebody, like, the only receiver I'm interested in paying is a guy who comes in as instantly on top of the depth chart.
Right.
Right? DJ Chark he's right there with Kendrick Bourne, Devontae Parker. By the way, Kayshon Boutte in 2021, before he got hurt against the SEC in 3 games.
Before he got hurt.
And
then he got hurt again this year.
He didn't get hurt this year. He was done with that team. That team was a mess.
What? How does that make it any better?
I just okay. Kayshon Boutte against the SEC, 18 catches, 285 yards, 3 touchdowns in 3 games. Against 2 games against AP top 25 teams in 2 games, 14 catches, 200 yards, and a touchdown.
He's
he showed up when
incredibly
it mattered.
talented. I've never denied that. He's incredibly talented, but just off of sheer reps, he's not a guy that has a lot of experience.
Isn't this what we said about, like, DK, though? And, like,
yeah, it is what we said about DK, dude.
And everybody's still so miserable that they didn't make that pick. And DK fell to the second round.
He was the number 1 receiver in the class.
DK fell to the second round. So,
and
okay.
I have the receipts to prove that I had him number 1, just for everybody.
I know you do.
Like,
so here's your shot at redemption.
Yeah.
All right, we'll get into it more down the road, but this is
my shot at redemption is Boutte.
Yeah, I think it might be. I think it might be.
The
I reserve the right to change my mind after the combine if he runs something bad. But
I am standing on Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think that he's the guy in this draft that I look at that everybody's going to overthink because they're going to say, "Oh, he's not that fast. He doesn't run that well." I don't think that. I think that JSN is going to end up being the best receiver out of this class.
I think you're creating a fallacy. I think most people think he's the best receiver in this class.
I think there's a lot of people, though, that don't see him as, like, that tier 1 receiver. Like, when you relative to other drafts, right? I'm not talking about this
that
draft.
guy's not in this draft. I don't know. I don't think he gets past the first round. I really don't. Does he fall out of the top 20? Yeah, I could see it. I don't think he gets past the first round.
All right, last call here. Eldred, what's up?
Hey, fellas. Like your draft, Evan, but I don't like your sentiment about that slot receiver.
Okay.
Because I'm with Paul. You can't win that much. And Quentin Johnson is going to be the steal of the draft. I know he's 6'5". He got speed. He's on the outside because you're going to need an outside threat. You know, everybody else, that inside stuff, it's not going to work because you ain't got nobody on the outside to scare the defense.
Okay.
And like you said earlier, in the championship game, 4 catches for 156 yards and 1 touchdown. Who on the Patriots can do that?
Well, I think the idea that the reason why I come at it with the inside receivers and where I guess I differ with Paul, who I've heard had this take, but I haven't really sat down and talked to him about it. I think where I differ is the quarterback, right? Because if Mac Jones is your quarterback and you're building your offense around Mac Jones at quarterback, then drafting the outside receiver that you have to throw bombs to down the field, like, is that really the skill set that you want to draft to pair with Mac Jones? Like Quentin Johnson.
He did it with Wilson. He did it with Williams. He did it with Dante Smith.
Yeah, he did it with great players in college, but this isn't college.
Okay, so was them.
But this isn't,
like I said, but he did throw deep though, right?
He threw deep at Alabama.
Field's still 100 yards, Evan.
I personally think that for Mac Jones, the middle of the field is where I think he's the most comfortable throwing the football in the NFL. I know what he did in college. Like, I know what he did at Alabama, but I think that he did that in a much different environment. I think here in the NFL, he's got to be that guy that dominates with the quick release, with the accuracy underneath, get the football in guys' hands and let him run with it. And I think that's the skill set that they have to target. I look at the blueprint that they've had with Brady as a blueprint that they should be.
But he's not Brady.
But he's not
Brady.
Josh Allen either. Like, I just don't think he's going to be throwing bombs.
Not Josh Allen either, but he's not Brady. You know, Brady can manipulate doing that and everything. But I'm with you with DK because doing that draft and before they got Harry, I called him about it. I said, that's what I wanted with DK Metcalf. And I was on way before they started drafting, like, that's the guy we should get. Everybody thought he was a one-trick pony. I said, no, he's not. And he proved out he wasn't a one-trick pony.
So Eldred, I would just ask you before we let you go. So do you think Quentin Johnston, you have him in that same DK category in terms of everybody's got him wrong? Like, is that what I'm hearing?
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's fair. Thanks for the call, Eldred. We appreciate you.
All right.
I think that's an interesting conversation with Quentin Johnson. I think I'm so N'Keal Harry PTSD'd by this situation that I just don't know if I can draft another 6'4" wide receiver early, right? Like I just have so much anxiety over that because of their ability to get that guy to translate at the NFL level. He's not a route runner. Like you watch him, even in his good games, he runs an under or a slant or something, and he's smothered, right? There's guys all over him in man coverage. He's not a great route runner underneath the defense. He gets better as he gets further down the field. A lot of his wins are on verticals. A lot of his wins are at the catch point. Like that type of guy, I just don't know. Is that what's best for this offense with Bill O'Brien? Is that what's best for Mac Jones? Like I still come back to with Mac Jones that I think that he's the best at his best when the ball's coming out quickly, he's attacking within 20 yards, and he's getting the football out over the middle of the field. And that's why I've gravitated towards the inside guys, right? Because I think you have to, if you have a dominant slot receiver, I think that you can still win like that.
And I think people hear that and they think checkdowns, and that's maybe it's what you mean. Like when I look at it, I agree with the middle of the field thing, but Mac's at his best in the intermediate.
Yeah.
That 8 to 15 yard range. So who are Johnson is not an intermediate receiver.
No,
he's
a downfield guy.
The best intermediate receivers in this draft are Njigba, Josh Downs, and Kayshon Boutte.
Yeah.
So those are the three guys. And like Zay Flowers, I don't even know if Zay Flowers is an intermediate receiver. He might just be a pure slot.
Yeah, he might be like a quick hitter or a deep guy. Like he might be like, in those two zones. Like I think you take the intermediate of the field out with him.
Those are the three guys I look at. If they want to truly maximize Mac Jones, who are the three best receivers for Mac Jones in this class in no particular order, Njigba, Downs, Boutte.
I also just look at, he mentioned the teams recently, or the teams that are still alive. Like a team like Kansas City. And look, I know Patrick Mahomes he's a cyborg. He's his own thing. I totally understand that. But still, their passing game is built around a tight end. It's built around Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is not a vertical threat in an offense, right? Like they don't have great outside receivers. They have good outside receivers. MVS and those guys are solid outside receivers. But they are winning in the passing game with Travis Kelce over the middle, with Travis Kelce at the short and intermediate levels, and obviously with Mahomes' magic. So I still think that there's a place for an offense to be built inside out like that. I don't think it's totally impossible to build it that way. I just don't want Mac Jones throwing bombs. They tried that this year with him. He was a turnover machine.
Right.
It just wasn't. It's just not what he's built for. It's just not. So they got to get back to playing to his strength, and I just don't think that a downfield receiver plays to that strength. All right, we didn't get to everything we wanted to get to today because Alex has got to go host over at 98.5 tonight, right?
Yep.
6 to 10?
6 to 10, 98.5 The Sports. We'll do some football talk. We're probably going to be heavy basketball.
Yeah, big
the
trade
entire NBA traded all of their second-round picks today. It was fascinating.
Well, we'll get more into Senior Bowl. We
can do some Senior Bowl. I still got like 10 minutes.
All right, we got 10 minutes.
Yeah, we got 10 minutes.
All right. We want to do Senior Bowl standouts. Like, who are a couple guys? We mentioned Brents. We mentioned some guys already that were Senior Bowl guys. The Alabama kids were at the Senior Bowl. Steen and Latu. Who else stood out to you in Mobile?
I mean, I got to mention my guy DeJuan Jones again because he's just so good. And he was
one day,
just
of practice,
1 day of practice.
One and done.
And he's totally. I'll give you another tight end I really like for them. Payne Durham from Purdue.
Yeah, he had a good week.
So first off, hang on. I think I got to sneeze.
Uh-oh.
No, I'm good. All right. Payne Durham, first off,
pro right
didn't play high school football till his senior year. What sport did he play instead? Lacrosse. Lacrosse player only. He played like Pop Warner football, but 3 years of lacrosse, got in football senior year, did not walk on, still in that 1 year, got a scholarship offer to Purdue, has been developing his game.
It's like that water polo kid a couple years ago.
I forgot about
Kahale Waring.
Well, no, what about...
He was here for like a minute.
What about... who was the guy last year that the Falcons... Jared Bernhardt.
Oh, yeah.
Who was he won the lacrosse Heisman, and then he went and played D2 quarterback and won a natty. So Payne Durham was a high school lacrosse player, switches to football, gets the scholarship to Purdue. Really great size, 6'5", 258, and that's the real number. That's the Senior Bowl number. That's not the school number.
Right.
Excellent blocker, plays with a great motor, but he really came along as a receiver this year. He made some great catches in that Big Ten championship game against Michigan. He's expected to go way later than I thought. Like, I'm thinking he's probably like a 5th, 6th round guy, should like sneak into the top 150, not going to be outside the top 200. a lot of places have him 6th round, 7th round, undrafted even. So maybe I'm missing something. I don't know how much you watched of him, but you talk about a project player. I don't know how much he helps you in 2023, but you take him in the 6th round. They got, 4, 5, 6th-round picks. You take him in the 6th round. You just kind of let him work for you behind the scenes. I think his upside is tremendous.
Yeah, he's a great inline blocker too, which I think if you start to look at what they want at that position, I think they would ideally like to get back to that a little bit more of somebody that can really be an extra tackle, so to speak, for you in the run game. I don't know if Johnny Smith and Hunter Henry have blocked as well as they were hoping they were going to block for them at that position. So I think that would be something that they would really like. You mentioned DeJuan Jones, just dropped the mic first day at Senior Bowl practices, didn't come back, kind of like a Zay Flowers.
Can I give you my weird comp for DeJuan Jones? I don't know if I've done it on the show.
Oh, boy.
My comp for DeJuan Jones in terms, like, as a draft prospect is Tyreek Woolen. He's just, I think people are going to.
What?
Tariq,
it's a totally different position.
No, no. Okay,
not even the same side of the ball.
So let me explain. Tariq Woolen, 6'4", 215, ran a low 4.3 40, and he still went in the 4th round.
Yeah.
Because I think people sort of looked at him and thought, it's too good to be true. There's no way he's this big and this athletic and is going to play at this skill level. And they were almost scared off by like how perfect of a prospect he was. I think there's going to be teams. This is why DeJuan Jones initially was projected as a 3rd-round pick. I think people looked at him and said, he's 6'8", 370, is an Iron Man, like doesn't get hurt. Like there's got to be some catch. And he comes out and he shows the footwork and everything. I think there's going to be teams that just assume there's some catch with DeJuan Jones and are turned off by him. Now, does that comp make sense? Like
a little bit. So with DeJuan Jones, I think
because you tell me why Tariq Woolen went in the 4th round last year. I know he wasn't super experienced,
he was
but the
pretty raw.
But the 4th round, 6'3", 4'3", 240.
You're not going to let this one go. I know.
I'm not, because I was right about it.
This is your DK Metcalf.
Yeah.
Okay. So
that's my comfort. DeJuan Jones is
right,
Tariq Woolen.
So DeJuan Jones, I think what stands out about him is his foot speed isn't great, right? Because he's a bigger guy.
Yeah.
So his ability to pick up his feet, move his feet, change directions, that type of stuff is a concern on his projection. But he's so long, and it's not just about being big, right? It's the length.
90-inch wingspan. It's a record. It's like an adult grown crane, like the bird.
He's so long that he can get, he can be in the wrong spot, right? He can be in the wrong spot and still be able to punch out with his hand and kind of buy himself some time to change directions, right? So he's somebody that is a little bit different. I agree. I really like Darnell Wright from Tennessee also.
Okay.
Like he's like sort of in this big right tackle tier for me as well for the Patriots, and early day 2, maybe they trade back or trade up or in 2nd round, whatever. What I love so much about Darnell Wright is that he was nails against top competition, like Will Anderson against Georgia, against Clemson last year, and then in the Senior Bowl in Mobile, every single time he went up against like NFL caliber players, he was excellent. I think he was probably the best tackle against Will Anderson that Will Anderson maybe ever faced in college. Like he totally shut down Will Anderson in that Tennessee-Alabama game last year, and that's maybe the number 1 overall pick in the draft, right?
Yeah.
So that was really impressive about him. I think we should mention 2 other guys. Tyreek Stevenson, right, from Miami.
Yeah, it was excellent.
He had a really good week down there. His ability to just basically run the route for the receiver.
Mirror routes.
He's extremely smooth, really good. He had 1 rep in one-on-ones. I don't think I've ever seen this. The quarterback didn't even throw the ball, because the receiver ran a crosser and Stevenson ran a better crosser, to the point where if the quarterback threw it, he would have just been throwing it to Stevenson as the intended target. So the quarterback just ate it, because the poor quarterback doesn't want to put an interception on film. So he just eats it. That is very, very rare in one-on-ones, because those always favor the receiver, obviously. And there's so much space. It's really difficult to defend a lot of these guys, and he was just excellent all week long in one-on-ones. The last name I'll give you, we got to talk a little bit about Tank Dell. I think Tank Dell had a good week. He is going to be a terrifying pick for some teams because of his size. He's 165 pounds, and In the NFL, that's just too small. Like, it just is too small. And I think the one thing that we talk about a lot in the draft is, oh, well, he'll get into an NFL strength program and he'll just gain 20 pounds overnight. Like, this is a guy that's 5'8", 165. Like, maybe he can gain some weight in the margins, but he doesn't have a frame that's built to carry more weight.
You worry if he puts too much weight on, is it going to impact his speed?
Right.
But at the same time, the league keeps making it less and less legal to hit these guys. So, guys like that are going to be more and more able to play in the league. I'll give you two more quick ones as well on defense.
Yeah.
Christopher Smith, the safety from Georgia.
Yeah.
A true free safety, which there aren't a lot of. I thought he had a really good week, potential Devin McCourty replacement. And I got to go Bryce Behringer from Michigan State, the punter. He was excellent. I think he had hang on, I have it right here.
I had to go with the punter.
Average 4.5 second hang time. Like, you said they're going to take kicker or punter. Behringer was really good. He's kicked in bad weather up in Lansing. Like, he's going to be on their board.
This offensive line group in Mobile was fantastic. I was raving about it all week.
Yeah.
They were excellent on both teams. National and American had great offensive linemen. Some other guys that really stood out. Jalen Duncan from Maryland is really raw. I think there's some issues with his pass sets, but he's super athletic. He's not going to have any issues getting out to landmarks or cutting off the corner. He's just got to work on his technique and his footwork and his pass sets, and he's going to be an NFL player. He's got really, really solid foundational just athleticism and play strength. Like, he's just got those two boxes checked, which I think for offensive linemen, that's certainly the number one thing you got to check, right, is having those two things. I know that there is some love for Bergeron from Syracuse. I'm not as in love with him for the Patriots because I think he might be a guard, but he's somebody that can play at the next level. Like, he's going to be an NFL offensive lineman somewhere. He's got that type of ability. The one clip that's going around about him that where he's throwing a guy into the quarterback and holding at the same time. Like, let's not pump that up anymore. That was not a good rep, but I think he had some good reps. I think he's going to be an NFL player. Lastly, who was the last guy I was thinking about? It'll come to me in a second, but I'll move.
Jalen Reed, Michael Wilson.
Yeah, Michael Wilson had a really good week.
I'm still worried about the
Stanford.
injuries with him. He could never stay healthy.
Yeah, he's somebody the Patriots take on, in like the fourth round, and they bet on the injuries. You talk about Butte, like that's their guy, right? Is a Michael Wilson type. I think that's possible as well in terms of a wide receiver. There's one more tackle, and I'm blanking on it, but I'll look it up really quickly. Is there anybody that was a dud to you, though?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, it's Andre Carter from Army, right?
Oh,
There's
yeah,
all this
right.
hype about this guy coming in. He had 15.5 sacks in 2021 and had a bit of a down year this year, and then just really, I mean, he got owned by DeJuan Jones. Like, it was bad. I'm going to get you. We were talking about maybe the first top 50 pick from a service academy in the modern era. It's going to be kind of fringe now. We'll see what he does at the combine, and I think he will have a very good combine. But yeah, he didn't help himself much this week.
So the one excuse that people were making for him that I don't know how accurate this is, but I saw it floating around a little bit. Army has some like pretty strict height and weight. Maybe Marine Matt can speak to this. Army's got some pretty strict height and weight like thresholds.
Yeah.
And you can't. So he's 6'5".
Right.
So at 6'5", if he was like 6'5", 300 pounds, the Army would say, "Oh, he's overweight." Like that's
why they run the speed option, because
right.
they can't be bigger than the other teams. They just have to be faster.
So he had to be at a certain weight.
Yeah.
So he was only 6'5", 265. So he's very high cut, and he doesn't have a lot of sand in the pants, right? So in Mobile, DeJuan Jones was just throwing him out at the club, Rob Gronkowski style. And I think maybe in the NFL he'll be able to pack on the guy that I forgot in the pros. Cody Mock. I mean, obviously.
Yeah, we already talked about him.
We already talked about him. That's why I forgot about him. Just excellent. I mean, what a tape. What a guy. I love him.
This is unbelievable.
I
this
hate
is happening.
that he's going to have I hate that he's going to have to play guard in the NFL, because if he was a true tackle, I would be 110% in.
We have spent so much time with you just complaining about, why are you considering drafting a guard? Why are you considering drafting an FCS player? Oh, you only like him because his teeth are missing. You only like him because of his hair. So often we did this, and now you're just like all in on like the most me prospect of all time.
A Mauler,
it's absurd.
A hog molly,
absurd.
like all of like the offensive line cliches that we used to talk about, right? Like that is Cody Mock.
Who was the
that's him.
Who was the center from Wisconsin Whitewater a couple years ago?
Oh,
Do you remember?
I know
Quinn Mears or something like that. Yeah, same thing.
I mean,
you hated that guy.
They come to the Senior Bowl. They played at this low level of competition at North Dakota State, and he just wants to put on a show, right? Like he knows that he's got to take a big leap up in competition. It's kind of like Cole Strange last year, and he just put on an absolute show. Cody Mock loved it. The one tackle that I thought was really disappointing was the BYU kid, Blake Freeland.
Yeah,
he had a really rough week. He's 6'6" and like not in a good way. Like he carries all of his weight above his waist, and he just like bends at the waist to block people, right? And so he's got no flexibility in his lower half. His knees and his hips there's zero flexibility there. So he was just getting ragdolled all week long. It was a really, really bad week, like to the point where I think that he's out of the top 100 completely. Like I think you have to wait to day 3 to pick this guy because against NFL competition in Mobile, it was really, really rough. The last name I will mention here, I'm not going to mention a running back because then I'll just break
Tyreek Spears.
No.
He was good. Spears was good. Spears was one of the best players there.
I don't care. Ivan Pace from Cincinnati, the linebacker. I thought he was really good as well. He's a little bit undersized. He's like kind of a Landon Roberts, right? Like he's like 6'1", 230 pounds. I think Roberts was like 6'1", 235 coming out. So they're very, very similar type of players. Really explosive downhill player. Like just he absolutely wrecked. I think it was the guy that everybody, the interior offensive lineman, everybody's been raving about that might be a first-round pick. I got it right here. He just took him on in the hole. Osiris Torrent from Florida.
Osiris Torrent,
and he hit. It was like kind of like a butt fumble situation where he hit Torrent so hard that Torrent tackled the running back for him. Like that was like how much of an impact he made. Was really, really good in blitz drills and in practice as well. He's somebody that really stood out to me. But yeah, Blake Freeland would be on my downs list from this week in Mobile. I'm really watching a lot of the tackles. I know what we didn't get to today. We got to our Senior Bowl stand. We didn't talk about Adrian Clem and the coaching staff. Next week, hopefully, it will be officially announced that he's actually coming to the Patriots. Right now, it's just reported that he's coming to the Patriots. So hopefully by next week, we'll have an official announcement on that. Make sure to listen to Alex on the Sports Hub tonight from 6 to 10. And we'll be back next week on Thursday, same time, same place, for another draft edition, probably. Very draft heavy, maybe some free agency of Catch-22. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. We'll see you guys next week.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.